Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma rabbi zidni ilma. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome dear students in the subject of Internet Architecture and Protocols. It's Ghulam Yasin, lecturer in Computer Science, University of Education Lahore, at DG Khan campus. Lecture objectives. Dear students, these are lecture objectives of today's topic. To examine what an ISP is, to identify ISP architecture, to identify ISP infrastructure, to examine the main components and basic structure of an ISP. In the previous lecture, we have also discussed some concepts regarding these objectives, but in the previous lecture, we have not completed the topic and the remaining topic will be completed in this lecture. So, in the coming slides, we will see in detail about ISP architecture and infrastructure. So, we will discuss some more servers which have been deployed by ISP to provide different services to its users. ISP server forms proxy server. Proxy servers are software applications that run on general purpose hardware and operating systems. A proxy server is placed on hardware that is physically between a client application and a web browser and web server. The proxy acts as a gateway that receives all packets destined for a web server and examines each packet to determine if it can fulfill the request itself. If not, it makes its own request to the web server. So basically there are two portions which are discussed over here. First portion describes that proxy server is software application which is applied on normal hardware and operating system, but operating system will be always network operating system. That may be Linux, that may be Unix, that may be Solaris, or that may be Windows Server. And proxy server is placed between a client application and a web browser, and this is act basically like a gatekeeper which receives all packets, all data packets which are for the web server. And if the request cannot be fulfilled for the local, then the request will be forwarded to next server. And one example of proxy server is when we create local area network in our campus or in any other company. That local area network is designed to provide services in a specific area. There is no concept of wide area network or internet. If we deployed internet service in that LAN, we have to purchase IP address from any service providing company. Let's suppose there are 20 or 30 computers in a lab and we want to provide internet services to all these computers. Then we have to purchase an IP address from any internet service providing company ISP. That IP address will be provided by ISP, and all these computers will run on a specific IP address. All IP addresses, local IP addresses of these computers will be different, but the address which will be used for WAN, which will be used for internet, that will be a single address which will be provided by a specific ISP, and that address will be deployed on proxy server, and that proxy server will act like a gateway for this network. The proxy server किसी भी लोकल एरिया नेटवर्क में जब हम इंटरनेट सर्विस यूज करते हैं तो उन तमाम कंप्यूटर्स को जो हम लैन में डिप्लॉयड कर चुके होते हैं, इंटरनेट प्रोवाइड करने के लिए हम एक स्पेसिफिक आईपी एड्रेस एक प्रॉक्सी सर्वर पर डिप्लॉय करते हैं जो उन तमाम सिस्टम्स को सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड करता है. सो दिस इज अ बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ प्रॉक्सी सर्वर इन any campus or in a small organization. Cache engine slash proxy server satisfies client request locally without going to original server. In this first point, the concept is if a user will request for any specific web page and that web page is available on locally which is used in cache engine. What is cache? In our system there is a small memory which is fastest memory which is called cache, and there are three levels of cache: level 1 cache, level 2 cache and level 3 cache. Level 1 cache is part of central processing unit, and level 2 and level 3 cache, these are external cache. Whenever we browse a website, the some portion of that website is saved locally on any system and that is saved in cache. If page not found in local cache, it fetches page from original server. If the request cannot be fulfilled locally, then the request will be forwarded to another system, another server. Reduces response time for client request. Proxy server or cache engine, basically this fulfill the request of a user locally and the request time will be minimized. Last point, reduce traffic on costly international links. Again, if the request can be fulfilled locally, then the request can't be forwarded to any next server, and likewise the time and cost will be saved, because if the request have to forward to next system and the next system and ultimately to the ultimate last system, then the links must be used, devices must be used, international links must be used, and likewise we have to pay according to this. So proxy server or cache engine is used to save the time as well as cost. So dear students, you can see a simple diagram over here. There is a user and a cache engine or proxy server. The user will request, first of all this request will be checked from proxy server, and after that if the proxy server can't process that request, the request will be forwarded to original server and original server will reply to cache, and that cache engine or proxy server will reply to user and user can get his or her request response in this way. ISP server forms mail server. So dear students, it's very important server which is used to process our emails, and you know very well that email is an important part of our lives, that is personal life or that is professional life. In both lives, email is very important for communication to all over the world. So there are 3 points in this slide. First point is, it is a server that is used to store the electronic messages of the network users. So all the network users, that users may be of Gmail user, that may be of Hotmail users, that may be of Yahoo users or any other specific email providing company, all the messages, all the data is stored on mail server. So whenever you have to send an email, you have to receive an email, and different types of data, that may be text data, that may be audio file, that may be video file, that may be any other specific format of data, all the specific data files are saved on email server. Second point, SMTP is used to transfer message. Simple mail transfer protocol is used to transfer message. Dear students, we have discussed about protocol. Protocol is some rules and regulations. Protocol is some standards which are used for the communication on the internet. So there are different types of protocol for different types of services. So if you have to send an email, then the protocol SMTP will used. ईमेल ट्रांसफर करने के लिए हम जो प्रोटोकॉल यूज करते हैं वो सिंपल मेल ट्रांसफर प्रोटोकॉल है, The last point is POP3, Post Office Protocol 3 is used to retrieve the messages. POP3, 3 is basically version. POP3 is used to retrieve the messages. Whenever you have to receive an email, then POP3 is used. To transfer an email, SMTP is used. To receive an email, POP3 is used. These are two very important protocols for the transmission and for the receive of email messages, and email contains different types of data which we send or which we receive. Mail server used to send outgoing mails using SMTP. As in the previous slide, we have discussed that the data which will be sent by user is based on simple mail transfer protocol, stores incoming mails in users' mailboxes. All the data is saved in a mailbox of any specific user, and the specific user will use the space which is provided by the company, for example Gmail, and all the data will be saved on Gmail cloud. Third point, users can fetch mails from their mailboxes using POP. Whenever the data or email will be saved in the user email boxes or mailboxes, that data will be retrieved or that mail will be opened with the help of post office protocol. So dear students, you can see a diagram over here. There are two users, local users and a remote user. Local user will request and remote user will also request, but the request of local user will be processed by local mail server and the request of remote user will be processed by remote mail server. And you can see that when the local user will request as well as the remote user will request, or the local and remote user will send an email, the simple mail transfer protocol is used on both sides. And whenever the user will open an email or the remote user will open an email, the email will be opened by POP or post office protocol. So in both cases, data or email is sent with the help of simple mail transfer protocol, and the data or email can be opened by user with the help of post office protocol. ISP server forms web server. So dear students, this is very important server again, which is used to host the website. First of all, we will see the definition over here, and after that I will discuss about this definition as well as some examples. A web server is a computer that delivers requested web page to your computer. For example, when you enter a web address in the web browser, it sends a request to the server that stores the website. The server then retrieves the web page and sends it to your browser. Let's take an example. Let's suppose whenever you will enter the web address of any company or any educational institute, we take an example of University of Education. So you will enter www.ue.edu.pk, as well as you will enter the web address of University of Education. Then this address will be processed by DNS. We have studied about this, but over here we will just discuss about the server, which is web server. So requests will be forwarded to web server. So what is web server? Web server is that computer or that machine which is used to store the website of University of Education. If the University of Education contains 6 or 7 web pages, all the web pages will be saved at web server. So first of all, website of University of Education will be created by any company, by any specific software house, and after that That website will be hosted by any specific company, that is hosting company, and that hosting company will keep the data of University of Education, which may be 6 or 7 web pages, on a specific machine. That machine is web server, and this web server is used to save the data of many companies or many education institute like a University of the Punjab, University of Education, UET, and so on. So many different educational institutes, many different companies' data can be kept on a single web server, and the specific portion of that hard disk will be allocated to specific company or specific educational institute. And in this way, you can see the web page or whole website on your system. The web server is that machine or that computer which saves the website or the web pages of specific organization. Router. International circuit is terminated in it. International circuit means whenever you will use wide area network in local area network, then the data or traffic which will be come from international, which will be come from outside the organization, that data will be terminated or that data will be received in local area network, and in this way a router is used for this purpose. If there is a local area network and in that local area network we want to use WAN as well, so we will deploy a router between our proxy server and the device which is received by an ISP. So router is between specific server, which is proxy server, and the specific device which will be received by ISP. Second point, we can have multiple lease line radio links terminated on same router. These are different types of internet access. For example, lease line, we have also discussed about this specific technology. Lease lines are dedicated lines, and these lease lines are used to provide high-speed internet access. And this high-speed internet access will be provided by the specific device, and the link of that device will be linked to router. Radio links, these are wireless access services, and WAP, wireless access point, is used for this purpose. Packet filters can be applied using access list. Dear students, we have discussed about packet filtering in our previous topic. So what is packet filters? When there is a threat of hacking in our network, then we can deploy some specific controls with the help of routers, and that controls are called access list or access control list. There are some different configuration commands which are deployed on routers, and in this way we can keep the threatening packet outside our network. And the last point is bandwidth can be limited on physical ports of router. We have also discussed about bandwidth. What is bandwidth? Bandwidth was total capacity of a link. So we can purchase 4 MB or 8 MB or 16 MB dedicated or shared bandwidth from any internet service provider, and that bandwidth will be further divided into some different computers which are in our specific network. Access network, dial-up access, dialed by users to access the ISP network. So dear students, whenever we have to use internet service, then we have to dial to an ISP. ISP को डायल करने का मतलब हम ISP से कनेक्ट होने के लिए जो मेथड यूज करेंगे, that is like this. So dial up is a normal method or technique by which we can access ISP network services. Previously used SLIP, Serial Line Interface Protocol, for dial-up authentication and access. Dial-up was used in very start of the internet when the internet services started in our country or all over the world. So basically dial-up was older technique in which we use internal modem in our system and we have to use a separate PTCL connection and we have to use PTCL telephone set, but at the same time we can't use voice and video or data. So if we have to use voice services, then the video or data services will be stopped, and if we want to use video or data services, then we have to stop voice services. So this is previous technology or method to access internet, but nowadays we have different technologies or different techniques by which we can send, receive at the same time voice as well as data, and DSL is example of it. We have discussed DSL in our previous topics. Next point, currently used protocol is point-to-point protocol, PPP. So nowadays we are going to use point-to-point protocol for this specific purpose. This also supports multi-link point-to-point protocol. So point-to-point protocol is used for two devices, but at the same time multi-link point-to-point protocol means the same time multiple devices can access the internet services. But again, dial-up access, typical dial-up access is older technique which was used in very start to provide basic internet services and very limited data rate to its dial-up users. Devices required to connect to internet. So dear students, first of all we must have computer or laptop, and these are digital devices. Digital device will always generate digital data, and the data is transmitted in the form of signal. So data will be in the form of analog signal or data will be in the form of digital signal. So in both cases the data will be transmitted in the form of signals. If there is analog signal, the data will be transmitted. If there is digital signal, the data will be transmitted. So first of all we must have two ending devices, and these devices will be computer or laptop. So ending devices means a device will be at sender side and a device will be receiver side. Second is modem. We have also discussed about this device, but in this topic we will revise our concept. So what is modem? Modem is a device which is used to convert data into analog signal and analog signal into again data. So modem stand for modulation demodulation. So modulation is a process to convert data into signal, and demodulation is a process to convert again signal into data. So this device may be internal or external, but nowadays normally this device is like external. So if we talk about at our home or in our office, we use DSL, digital subscriber line device, DSL device, which is provided by in our country by PTCL, which is our national company. So that DSL is external device which is used to connect to internet, and that device is used to convert our data into signals, and that signal is those signals are transmitted over different existing lines, copper lines, in all over the world, in all over the company, and in all over the different areas. Next is telephone line. So dear students, telephone line is very important in this sense. If we use a connection of wired connection, if there is wired connection, we must have some telephone line, and on that specific existing telephone connection we can send our data. So telephone line is compulsory. And the last is ISP connection. Definitely, if we want to connect our system to all over the world, to global village, we must have an internet connection. An internet connection is provided by any specific internet service provider, and we have discussed in detail about internet service provider, its architecture, its infrastructure in our previous lecture and in our this lecture. So we need computer, we need modem, we need telephone line, and we need ISP connection for the internet service. Devices used in an ISP, first of all, is router, as we have discussed in our previous slide about router. So we will see just briefly over here. So router is a device which is used between proxy server and the device which is received from an ISP. And router is a WAN device, and router works on IP addresses. We can stop hackers with the help of different techniques. We can stop threatening data with the help of different techniques, and ACL access control list is most commonly used, which is deployed on router. Second device is switch. Switch is again a switching device which is used in an ISP network or in company's network, and switch is layer 2 device which works on MAC address. But if we use layer 3 device which are ATM switches, and ATM switches are like routers. Radius server, we have discussed about in detail radius server. This is remote authentication, dial-in user service, and authentication and accounting system. We have discussed about authentication, which was basically the process by which a user may be authenticated. When a user will enter login and password, that login and password will be matched by the server, and if the login and password is correct, that user will be allowed to use the service of that specific company. Access server, we have also discussed about access server, and the last one is proxy server. Just in our previous slides in this lecture we have discussed about previous server or cache engines. So these are again devices which are deployed on ISP side, router, switch, different servers, and the combination of these devices and a backbone network is used to provide the services to its users. This is our last slide, and over here, as usual, I have put some references. So dear students, I hope that all of you are going to use the book which I have recommended as textbook from the start of our lectures, which is TCP/IP Protocol Suite, second edition by Behroze Frozen. All the lecture material which we have discussed in today's lecture can see from this book, and there are some reference books: Computer Network, 4th edition, Tannenbaum, and Computer Networking, which is written by Jim Cross. So basically slides are just outlines. You can just read the slide, and if you have to study in detail, then you have to see different books and different chapters. So dear students, thank you very much for your concentration, for your learning, for your passion. I hope best of luck for all of you always.